Hello everyone, welcome to the Travel Coach, moving body, mind and spirit. My guest today is an award-winning master of wine, communicator and consultant, born and brought up in Belfast and currently based in London. After graduating with first-class honors, she joined the wine trade, working for several businesses, including the prestigious Berry Brothers and Roth. She completed her WSET diploma and went on to achieve the Master of Wine qualification, winning 3 awards in the process. In 2016, she established her own business, providing a range of services to her clients, such as wine list design, corporate and private wine testing events, private wine tuition, and targeted help for WSET diploma students. And McHale, welcome to the Travel Coach.
Thank you, Sonia. I can't wait to connect with you and with your lovely audience. I know this is going to be a great episode.
Definitely, and thank you very much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you on board today. As you know, as usual, my first question for you is about your relationship with travel growing up. I would like to know more about what memories do you have from this phase of your life?
You know, when you told me you were going to ask me this question, the first thought I had was, I didn't travel anywhere until I was 16. And then I remembered that when I was nearly 7 years old, my whole family moved to America for a year. I'd almost sort of like completely blanked it out. But it was 1987. I was 6 years old, nearly 7. And I was a very innocent, sort of naive child. And the next thing my father announces that he's going on a year's sabbatical. We're going to Mississippi for 6 months and Nevada for 6 months, and we're all moving there. And suddenly there I was in the deep south of America, studying at elementary school and having to learn how to interpret a new southern drawl where everyone called me Anne, like that. And I had to work real hard to understand what they were saying. But it was transformational. You know, I know that that's what you specialize in, the transformational nature of travel. And that was definitely a start. But after that, I would say I didn't really travel much until I was 16. We mainly took family holidays in Ireland. But at the age of 16, we went on a summer holiday to France. And that ignited in me a love of the French language. I'd already been studying it, but I just thought it was so wonderful that all these people around me communicated in something so foreign. I then went on to study French at university, and I lived in the city of Lyon for a year. And that was what got me ultimately into the wine business.
That was my question, right? Because I feel so curious. I know that, well, first of all, I felt so impressed about your CV and all, the degrees and qualifications and awards you have. I know that there is only 419 Masters of Wine in the world and only 151 are women. So I'm curious about where this passion for wine comes from. How come did you decide to make it a profession?
You know, Sonia, it kind of happened by accident, like some of the best things in life. The passion for wine was there from quite an early age because my father's really into wine as an amateur. And, when I was a teenager, we would drink wine with dinner. Around the dinner table, my father would always talk about how he had founded the first ever student wine society at Queen's University in Belfast back in the 1960s. So there was this love of wine in our family, but it's not the kind of thing that, university careers offices will tell you you can make a career out of. So it didn't even occur to me to make a career out of it. But when I left university with my French degree, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I applied for all these jobs where they wanted a French speaker. And the first job I got offered was in a small wine agency in London. So I was using my French skills and, arranging all the orders coming into the UK of the French wines.
Amazing. Wow. And look at you now.
I know.
Super. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I have the feeling that this is still a very male-dominated industry. I don't know if you had experienced any challenge as a woman, especially at the beginning of your career.
It's interesting, that question, because it's not something that I personally have experienced. Uh, Certainly, like many industries, it has traditionally been very male dominated, and that is shifting. So a third of the membership of the Institute of Masters of Wine is female, as you pointed out. But if you look at the balance of who's actually studying for the Master of Wine, then it's 50-50. And I found actually that in the area that I was in, which was more educating, communicating about wine, there were just as many women. I think some women that I encountered in the industry who perhaps were working on the sales, more brokerage side of fine wine, encountered a more male dominant environment. But personally, it wasn't something that was a challenge for me.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, you're obviously an excellent student, and you are, based on your academic achievements. So you understood wine intellectually really well, wine theory and wine tasting, obviously. So, but you said that you didn't get wine the way you did until you traveled to the regions which produced it. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can get a very solid understanding of wine and an enjoyment for wine, I would say, from tasting wine wherever you're based and reading books and attending courses. But there are certain things that you can only really ignite this deep excitement and deep passion for it when you go and experience the place where the wine was made. So on one level, wine is just a beverage, and it's a beverage that many of us enjoy on a regular basis. And on another level, it's a product which is uniquely tied to the place that it comes from. And it is intertwined in that place with the history, the culture, the geography, and the people of that place. And there's something that each of those things brings to a glass of wine. And when you go there and you experience it, you meet the people, you learn about the history, you see that the reason this particular vineyard is sheltered from the wind is because that mountain sits over there, and that's why the grapes ripen at a certain time. And when you stand in the vineyard, this is one of my very favorite ones, when you stand in the very vineyard that the wine you're drinking came from, that's something that's really hard to equal. And then what happens is that when you then come home and drink a wine from one of those places again, it sort of re-infuses you with all those experiences you had, and you get to remember all of those people and places, just by having that glass of wine.
Do you have any specific place, because I know you travel all over the world and you visited many of these countries that are producing wines. Is there any specific place that you have, close to your heart that you would like to share?
Oh my goodness, it's so hard, Sonia. That's like when people ask me what my favorite wine is. I'm like, oh my goodness. I've been to so many beautiful places. Probably one of the most transformational wine travel experiences for me was in 2016, early 2016. I had just handed in my notice to my job at Berry Brothers and Rudd. I'd been there for 10 years. But it was time to take a big leap into the unknown and do something different. So I handed in my job without anything concrete to go to. And I took a sort of months-long sabbatical, and I went to Stellenbosch in South Africa, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. And for the first time, I actually worked in a winery. So I did the production side of things, which again was something up until that point I had only read about in books and witnessed from a distance. And all of my my former colleagues from Berry Brothers were sort of laughing at me because they know, I like to be quite glamorous. I like to have my nails done. I don't like to indulge in a lot of manual labor. And then suddenly there I was in a winery wearing sort of scruffy tracksuit bottoms, having my manicure ruined, being in the winery at 7 a.m. every day, kind of hauling things around and taking measurements in tanks and doing this thing where you punch down, you have to mix up the skins and the juice during the red wine fermentation. So I was punching them down with a stick and all this kind of thing. It was hard work, but it was at a really pivotal moment for me because I was just starting out on my self-employed journey, and it was also really, I think, really important for me to realize that the story I told myself that, oh, I wasn't a person who did manual labor, etc. I could do all these things. And, you know, I was genuinely helpful to the team there and met wonderful people that I'm still in touch with. So it is really close to my heart. And I dream of going back to Stellenbosch before too long.
Wow, what an experience. And yeah, if you tell to yourself a few years ago before that, you would say, I would never do that, right? And you were there doing by yourself.
Exactly.
So how do you think these experiences, traveling to the place, learning about, you know, where the wine comes from, talking about the people that were there involved, how will this experience help you to be better in your profession, in your field?
I think primarily they give you that passion so that what you're doing doesn't feel like work in one sense. But it also helps you just on a practical level to understand better, because the wine industry, as you've kind of touched upon, has got quite an established series of qualifications that you can work your way through, professional qualifications. So beginning with the Wine and Spirit Education Trust examinations and then finishing with the Master of Wine. And in order to do well in those exams, you need to really understand your subject. And like I say, you can learn it from books, but it just sinks into your mind so much more when you have been somewhere, you've spoken to the winemaker, you've, you know, in my case, you've taken those measurements in the tank every morning at 7 a.m. and you've seen how the fermentation is bubbling away and developing. It's much easier to then explain that to someone else, to pass those exams and to do what I still do as a job, which is to communicate with others and spread that passion, share that joy.
Definitely. And what you said, you learn what you cannot learn in books, being there and experiencing the places. And that's something that travel brings, right? That is something that is difficult to communicate. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. One of my favorite examples is, you know, when you're studying for your Wine and Spirit Education Trust exams, one of the things you always learn about is the different pests that, you know, eat grapes during the harvest in vineyards all over the world. And so here in England, for example, it's not very exotic, you know, it's birds who eat grapes. But then you learn in your books that in the south of France, it's wild boar. In South Africa, it's baboons. And in Australia, it's kangaroos. And the first time that I saw a whole bunch of kangaroos hopping around a vineyard, sort of trying to get at the grapes, I was like, right, okay, so this is real. And you never forget something like that. And it's just it was so funny to see it.
It's from knowledge to experience, totally. You will create a memory there that you will not forget easily, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you think, based on your experience and all the places you travel, you know, you've been around wine and, well, you are from north of Europe, yeah? From north of Ireland, now living in the UK. So can you see differences, maybe culturally, in these countries that are wine producing countries versus the beer or whiskey producing countries that you have noticed maybe around food, around how people gather?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say that it's certainly, I would describe it as a kind of a Mediterranean culture. You know, the idea that wine is to be consumed with food, it's to be consumed around a table with others. And that is a culture that has, through globalization, it has spread, you know, so we in Northern Europe, we have a really established wine culture in many countries. And so it's very similar, but it definitely originated, I would say, around the Mediterranean countries. And one of the first French language experiences I had after that holiday when I was 16, the following year at age 17, I went to be an au pair in northern France for 5 weeks to become fluent in French. And you know, the father of the family, it was on a farm in Brittany, and I was taking care of the kids while they were out working in the farm. But at lunchtime, they always came back, and the father would always have wine with lunch, and that was something that we just didn't do at home. So that was very, very different culturally, and I would say that's still something that I remember. And I still can't even have wine at lunch, you know, I just makes me fall asleep afterwards. I know in Spain you have your siesta for that, right?
Yeah, definitely. We are used to, the glass of wine, and they say it's healthy. Well, I don't know. If you have any opinion on that, that some doctor said, one glass of wine every day is good for your heart. But we
there
believe
certainly
that.
has been a lot of evidence showing that. So
Absolutely. I believe that, and I want to believe that maybe. So tell me more about this beautiful trip you had. I don't know if it's the last one, but the last one I know, at least that the one you went to Santorini. How was this experience? I know you were looking forward to it and it was also personal, important for you. Can you share about this experience you had?
of course, yes. So I saw, Sonia, that you went to Santorini last year as well. So that probably helped me decide when I saw your photographs.
That's my
Oh,
honeymoon, yeah.
yeah. Oh, amazing. And I saw your photographs and I thought, I want to go there. But even before that, I had wanted to go there for years because I first tasted the wine of Santorini when I was working at Berry Brothers. Must have been about 8 or 9 years ago. I first tasted white wine from Santorini, and they have this indigenous grape variety called Assyrtiko, which has all these remarkable qualities. Santorini, as you know, is a very hot place. You know, it's quite near the equator. It's quite far south. And normally white wines, in order to retain freshness, need to be grown in a cooler environment. Otherwise, they don't have enough acidity. They're not crisp enough. They're not balanced. But Assyrtiko, as a grape variety, has these unique qualities where even when it gets very ripe, it can retain acidity. And it also has this kind of like stony mineral quality to it. So absolutely delicious wines. So that was my main reason for wanting to visit Santorini. And then your photos helped me along. So in March this year, my partner and I booked our trip there. We visited lots of vineyards when we were there and drank lots of Assyrtiko, as well as experimenting with the other varieties on the island. And then on our last night, he got down on one knee and proposed. So it's an even more special place.
It's something about, love in this place. It's like, very romantic, right?
It is very romantic.
You had your proposal there, I had my honeymoon, so it's something special in this area. And now that you mentioned the vineyards, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I already told you, but yeah, it's beautiful, and memories that you will have forever, and the beautiful pictures, absolutely. I just remember like if it was yesterday, when I was there, and I would repeat all the time, as many times as I can. So I just, when you were talking about the vineyards and all the places you visited there, I remember something very curious, because I also had like a wine tasting when I was there in Santorini, delicious wine, I agree. And they do something very weird with the vineyards. They just put them like a ring, I never seen this before. And I suppose it's because of the temperature, it's hotter, right? And the wine needs, maybe the grape needs to cool. They do like holes, and I don't know if it's unique or there is also in other places in the world, but I never seen anything similar.
No, I haven't seen anywhere else in the world where they do that. It's a kind of, they call it a sort of basket training system, where they wind the vine round and round, so it starts to resemble a basket. A lot of it is to do with protecting the vines from the wind, because you may have experienced when you were on the island some very strong winds. We had that a couple of days. In fact, one of the days I was visiting vineyards, I put on my Instagram reels, me blowing in the wind. Basically, you could hardly walk forward without almost falling over, and that really made me think, yes, I'm experiencing what I've read about in books, which is that Santorini is very windy and the vines need to be protected from the wind.
Okay, so it's the wind. Very interesting. Yeah, it's amazing. So, I don't know if you wanna, have you ever done any wine tour? These tourist attractions, wine places. Have you ever done one of these routes in different countries with tasting? I heard about them, but I never tried.
Yeah, I would say that more and more places in the world are getting very well set up to welcome tourists. It used to be the tradition that the New World, in other words, places like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, had the reputation for being beautifully set up, you know, with tours and restaurants with views and everything, whereas the Old World, the European countries, weren't so ready to welcome people in that way. But actually, a lot of them are upping their game as well. So you can travel to many countries in the world and have a beautiful tasting and tour experience. I have tended always to visit as a trade visitor, so I haven't tended to join the tours. I did do once, though, I think in the south of France, there's an area down near the Spanish border, the Roussillon area. So it's a little town called Banyuls where they make a sort of port-like fortified wine. And I did join a tour there, which was really enjoyable. So I highly recommend wine tourism. I think it's a growing industry in many countries.
Yeah, definitely. Need to check this out. So, Anne, what's the most, can you share any anecdote, like a fun anecdote that you had in your career? I don't know if you were in your trips or related with wine and travel that you can share with us too.
Ooh, good question. I think I've shared some of my best stories with you already. The South Africa one was the best because, you know, trying to think of me, you know, getting up at 6 o'clock every day to get my hands covered in grape juice and having my nails ruined, and the kangaroos. I'm trying to think if I can think of anything else. They're probably buried deep in there somewhere. I might have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, no worries. So is there any challenge that you had to overcome? Because I know sometimes, you know, when we are busy with our schedules and, we kind of buy our own excuses to not travel or not to maybe invest the time, the effort, the energy to go to these places and have these experiences. I don't know if this is something you ever experienced or you just were so excited to go and travel that you didn't have any problem.
Sometimes it was challenging. So I was fortunate enough to be awarded a scholarship by Wine Australia in 2012, which allowed me to travel through several wine regions of Australia, which was a really magnificent experience, an incredible opportunity. But I was on my own. So there were parts of that were challenging because quite often there was an intense schedule of vineyard visits every day, and you know you need to be sort of your bright, perky, sociable self at each visit. So I did find that like quite draining and quite tiring, and I think people will associate wine tasting with fun. But when you have to start at 8:30 a.m. with your very first glass of red wine, and you have to spit everything out because you can't risk getting drunk because you're, you know, a professional, it actually is harder work than it sounds. So I do have some memories of wine trips where I was really tired. You know, I was having a wonderful time and meeting amazing people, but there were so many wines to taste. It can be a bit grueling on the palate, and you have to be at your best. You know, you're representing yourself, you're representing your industry, your country. So sometimes it wasn't as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, it's what you said. We relate maybe with fun and travel, wine, all this, but sometimes this other side that we don't see that is there as well. Yeah. What's next now, and what's in your projects? What is in your agenda professionally? Also, maybe traveling.
Ooh, travel. I haven't planned any new wine travel yet. We're thinking of going possibly to Sardinia on our honeymoon, and they make incredible wine there. I should add as well that we're actually getting married in a vineyard. So our wedding guests will, it's going to be next May in England. So our wedding guests will get to experience exactly what I talked about earlier, which is the joy of drinking a wine in the place where it was made. So really looking forward to that.
Wow, beautiful.
And professionally, well, I have something in the pipeline. I won't reveal all yet, but as you know, one of my passions is communicating my love of wine to others. And I love to talk about wine in a sort of unstuffy way. I think wine has a bit of an image problem. People think of the wine connoisseur and they think of somebody stuffy and pompous. I don't like to talk about wine in that way. I like to make it very fun and relatable. So I have created a resource for people who want to really just kind of take a leap in their understanding of the key concepts that underlie wine, and that will build into something next year, which I'm looking forward to creating. So watch this space.
Wow, looking forward to it no more. Okay, Anne, you know that I love collecting hidden gems from all around the world. So I don't want to let you go until you share with us from your place, your region, your area. What's the thing that you would say is a must to visit that maybe it's not that famous, but you will recommend?
Well, you know, I spoke briefly just now about English wine, and I think I've lived in England for 18 years now, and I think a lot of people from outside the UK aren't yet aware that here in England we produce world-class sparkling wine. And with a client a couple of years ago, I created the country's largest English sparkling wine list in a beautiful bar in central London. And that they're not a client anymore, but we still work together on some projects. And it's a bar that I would highly recommend visiting. It's called the Coral Room near Tottenham Court Road Tube Station. It's a magnificent, elegant bar to be inside, and you can try some of our country's best sparkling wines in there. So I highly recommend a visit.
That's good to know. Yeah, we will add it to our bucket list. Thank you very much, Jan. So last but not least, where people can contact you? What's the best way if somebody wants to contact you?
Of course, you can find me at my website, which is annemchale.com. So that's ANNEMCHALE.com. And if you would like to get hold of the resource I mentioned earlier, which is my free mini video series for people who are new to wine, you can just check out the new to wine heading on the website and you can get hold of it there.
Definitely. I love to check it out as well. Thank you, Anne. It's been a pleasure to have you on board the Travel Coach today.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Look forward to speaking again soon. It was fantastic.
Thank you. And everybody tuning in, happy and safe travels. Bye, Anne. Take care.
Bye, Sonia.